Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's my Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. It's the right time. The phone number, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. And, Mike, we're going to start with Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I think the NFL stepped in and did something that makes a lot of sense today. The NFL canceled Thursday's Texans-Cowboys preseason game so that everybody can focus on what matters here. And what matters first and foremost, anytime we're having a discussion that involves Houston, is life. We said this yesterday. We'll say it again today. The most important thing through all of this is not football. It's actual life. I think this is a moment where the NFL steps in and recognizes, hey, let's get things prioritized. And the first priority, life.
And this comes on the heels of what we talked about yesterday with the Astros and the Rangers. The noticeable difference in this being this is a preseason game where it's a lot easier to throw this away. Now, tickets for the Texans-Cowboys game went on sale Tuesday night. More than 40,000 have been sold, with the proceeds going to Hurricane Relief Fund. Those who purchase tickets can get a refund, but if not, you have to imagine most people will opt for the if not here. That money will go to the relief fund for Hurricane Harvey. The Texans said in their statement that the McNair family, which owns the team, will make a donation equal to the money that would have been generated from ticket sales. So the Texans helping pitch in the way a lot of the Houston area teams have in the midst of the crisis.
And I realize that the conversation several people have had today is that sometimes it takes a crisis, a catastrophe to bring everybody together and see some of the good in the world. But let's just reflect for a second in a world where we want to talk about every negative that comes from any professional athlete, that we're seeing a lot of good from professional sports in this instance. We're seeing J.J. Watt being a great example of somebody that we've all been talking about. Started out with the ideal of raising $500,000, has now raised over $6 million. And it's really staggering to see some of the positive influence and impact that these athletes can have in a time of crisis. They can help financially, and that right now is a huge help.
It is a huge help, and it's something that, listen, doesn't come without some semblance of talk about it being a preseason game. That still matters to a certain group of guys. Now, it's noted that I was talking about this with Shannon before the show, and now I've forgotten that this year they're going to the model where it's one big round of cuts in the NFL that would have occurred after this fourth preseason game. And for guys like me, guys on the back end of that roster, where maybe now with hindsight I can say that, you know what, more often than not, the teams have their minds made up before that fourth preseason game. But that's a lot of reps for guys that are on the back end of that roster that are in those positions that are now gone with this game. And I'm not saying it should trump ever what's going on in all this, because ultimately this is the right thing to do. So many of the guys on this team, in this organization, are worried about getting back to their families. You can't almost expect someone to play in something as trivial and meaningless ultimately as a preseason game with that in mind.
That being said, you're right. This is the first year they've gone. They used to do cutbacks, for anyone that doesn't know. Cuts used to be 90 to 75, 75 to 53. Now it's one ginormous cut tomorrow that's going to go, or Saturday that's going to go from 90 to 53. That's 37 people per active roster that are just going to hit the street. So this obviously has an impact to some of the guys that are struggling trying to make a living. Sometimes luck is a terrible thing to have happen in this situation. It's just unlucky.
Yeah, you can talk about this the same way as you talked about. It's not different. The outcome is the same as you go back to 2011 when you had the lockout shortened off season that year in 2011 leading up to the year. I was just talking to Kyle Rudolph, as a buddy of mine, who's a tight end for the Vikings, and he talked about how difficult it was. Yeah, no, listen, I got friends. It's fine. I don't want to hear it from you, country music star, every chance you get to name drop. And this is even off air when I bring up somebody and all of a sudden it's, well, yeah, you know, they're a friend, so let me know if you ever want to go to the show. I got tickets.
Well, you know what?
That's the backdrop for you as you try and call me out in the midst of my coherent point.
Go ahead, please. I'm sorry. I'm
done
sorry.
now?
But,
you good?
No, not even close. I mean, we're just getting started. But by the way, if you ever need tickets, just hit somebody else up.
If anyone ever needs tickets, just slide into Jason's DMs and ask him. He's offered for all of you.
I'm a nice guy. I can't help that. That's part of my charm.
All right. Well, we're going to see how far that goes. I have some pretty strong demands that I've got coming on down the line this fall.
Mm-hmm. Says the guy that's always backstage at a concert with his dad. Go ahead.
Wow, I had to throw the dad line in there. Oh, that's foul. That's sort of foul, but I digress. Talking to Kyle, talking about how difficult it was coming into starting your pro career. And in the same sense, for him, it was one thing. He was a second-round pick, but you have no offseason, essentially, so you're going right into training camp and into the season. But for a lot of those other guys, any chance you had of learning the system in-house, of getting to know the coaching staff and the team and kind of ingratiate yourself in those ways, now gets thrown away. This, largely different circumstances. This, not any sort of work dispute, but real life coming in and obviously and rightly taking the place and trumping sports and all of this, but it doesn't come. I said to start this off, it's easier because it's a preseason game. It's easier for the majority, and just because I came from that small group of guys that's going to be disproportionately affected by this in the football sense, I have a little bit of sympathy for them, acknowledging fully that kind of gets drowned. It gets trumped by what we're seeing, and rightly so, in Houston. Like, that's what this all comes back to, is you think about the number of people affected by this, and this is a no-brainer decision at this point.
Well, and I also think there's sort of a real-world application. As we said yesterday, it's difficult to focus on anything other than your family and the real-life things that you're going through right now when you're living through this sort of an incident, and when you're living through the flooding and the complications it causes to real life. So this is a huge moment for the Texans to be able to sort of get a couple of extra days to get life in order. And that's going to be important, I think, coming into this season. It's going to be distracting enough. There's got to be some way that they can sort of get some normalcy. This can help with that.
Yeah, and it's worth noting in the football sense of this, just because I saw a note of this on Twitter. I forgot the Cowboys were one of the teams that played in the Hall of Fame game, weren't they? So they've technically already had four preseason games on their side for this, so certainly not going to suffer any there. And again, the Texans and their team and that organization has a lot more to clearly worry about at this point. It's just, coming on the heels of what we had yesterday, we have another Houston and Dallas set of teams coming together to make a decision that's ultimately going to help ease some of the stress of these people involved, because a lot of guys on the team, their families have been in some of these shelters taking refuge from what's going on in the storm. They've been evacuated from their homes. This is one of those places we always talk about in the world of sports, but it's come up a lot in football lately because of some of the protests and different things, where we say athletes are people in their communities just like you are. And so when you look at the guys on this team, yeah, they're getting ready for a season. They've got all these things going on, but a lot of their families and their home life are affected just as much as everyone else who's still back there dealing with those problems now. And so they're trying to balance all of the stressors that other people are. You talked about this yesterday, of having to kind of make those tough calls financially, insurance-wise, try and plan for life after the storm once you've secured safety. This is another instance that pops up where these guys are just like you and me.
That's Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE network. So, Mike, let me ask you a real question, because, this is one of those moments that in a year or two we'll look back on whatever happens for the Texans, and the flood will either be something that brought this team together and was a reason they were able to achieve great things, or it will be something that sort of was such a distraction it ripped them apart at the seams. And that seems like in the moment we never really know. You've been in locker rooms. How does somebody keep it from going one way or the other? How do you keep it from tipping and turn it into a positive? Can it be turned into a positive that brings everybody together?
I don't know if anything like this ever gets turned into a positive. I think you treat it like what it is. I mean, I've been around tragedy in the locker room, and it's a moment. I mean, like you said, we shouldn't need these kind of moments for perspective, but it's also impossible to ignore when you're standing in front of something that is so much bigger than you and what you're trying to accomplish with the guys around you, that it relaxes you in the work sense, because you have that very acute sense of, all right, people are losing their lives, their homes, their families are being infringed upon, guys on your team and within the organization. When it becomes personal in all of those ways and affects your community, it's very easy to come into work when it's all done and say, all right, maybe this is that moment that reminds us all, like we needed it, how lucky we are to be here, how lucky we are just to be healthy and with each other every day. Like, those are things that we all take for granted in certain regards. But when you get in the aspect of a team sport like football, maybe it heightens your sense of duty to each other and to the people around you. Like, you want to go out and play harder. We say that guys don't play for fans very often. This is one of those notable exceptions where they're going to go out there with those Houston fans and Houston natives on their mind for the rest of the year.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
So, Mike, fantastic article written by Mina Kimes, who, by the way, is going to join us next hour at 5:30 Eastern Time. Fantastic article written by Mina. It's going to be on the cover of ESPN. The magazine is on ESPN.com right now. Gives us sort of an inside look at Aaron Rodgers. And it's funny because what really hit me on it is so many of the quarterbacks in today's generation are defined by some level of it's almost like a character. You can easily in one sentence say, things about each of them. Peyton Manning comes to mind as somebody that took a new level of popularity when he started becoming the ad guy. You saw him everywhere. And you could sort of summarize what people think of Peyton Manning quickly. You could summarize what people think of Cam Newton at times quickly. You can summarize some of the bigger personalities quickly because it's personality that quarterbacks seem to have. Aaron Rodgers has always been a little more difficult to summarize because he comes off as quiet. He comes off as a little guarded to some people. It was amazing to read and see how meticulous it sort of seems and feels with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like he's just flat out cooler than everybody in a good way. I feel like there's just a cool factor to him that I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, guarded seems like the right word. Thoughtful is probably a way you'd put it. And when you read all this and talk to Mina about it like we will, it's interesting because he's so guarded and thoughtful that it's almost like he scouted out Mina for this. I mean, she's going to talk about how he came to her house to do this and is sort of analyzing her along the way. This is how seriously he takes how he's presented to other people, maybe because he does recognize he's been burned in the past, and there are some very real examples of that in his mind. But like you said, I'm so interested because usually the way we define quarterbacks and the way guys define themselves is all pretty cut and dry. Like, we always hear football is what I do, but it's not who I am. Most of the time, that's a kind of bit of BS. Like, a lot of guys will say that, but they don't really know who they are outside of football. And Aaron Rodgers gave us a window into the thought process of someone who had that realization of, is this all I am, and how comfortable am I with that?
And that really surprised me because I think that there's an opportunity for so many. When you're in the entertainment business, whether it's music or acting or football, it's all entertainment business to some level. When you're in the entertainment business and you have certain opportunities, it can really raise your platform and it can make you monetizable to a different level. And I always look back at the discount double check opportunity and sort of that window there where Aaron Rodgers had the opportunity to sort of monetize things and become one of those face of the NFL guys. And he's done that in a different way. It's been a different path. And the guarded aspect of it is a surprise. It's almost like he took a look at his fork in the road and said, okay, to the left is I'm going to be everywhere and do everything and be on every commercial and, be this pitch guy and sort of fill a void that Peyton Manning is leaving. To the right is a more calculated, guarded, as you said, way of approaching things and being a little bit more close to the vest. And I feel like he's taken that approach, and it's truer to what he seems to be. It's interesting because Mina points out in the article, which, again, you can find on ESPN.com, that it's not uncommon. Typically, a writer will meet an athlete in a location of their choosing that sort of gives you a little insight into what they like, their hobbies, what they enjoy. And this was the opposite. There's a point where Aaron decided he was going to sort of dictate those terms, and he was going to dictate the environment. It's very calculated, and it surprised me to see that level of calculation.
Yeah, and that to me is interesting, but you can understand it right as a response to other things that have come up potentially. I mean, this guy was dating a famous celebrity in Olivia Munn and talked about in the article how difficult that is at times, because you're right, fame does have all those great opportunities for guys, but it also has drawbacks. And he talked about losing a lot of that privacy in very personal places, like a relationship, like his family life that got called into the public light this last year because his brother Jordan, who now works here as an analyst at the SEC network, that all came to light during his time on The Bachelorette. So Aaron's seen along the way the ways that this can bite you, and so he's trying to do what a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of players do in a sports sense, and that's control the things that he control, and he has the time and means and ability to do it at a very high level because he's a smart guy. I mean, the stuff I'm interested in here, too, is a lot of what he talks about at the beginning as far as his views on things that are kind of taboo. Like, he talks about politics and religion in the same article. Now, he does them in very nuanced ways, but brings up a lot of things that most guys wouldn't be comfortable talking about. Talks about meeting after their Super Bowl victory. It talks about his meeting with, I'm trying to find the first name of the pastor that he, Sorry, this is really bad radio. He met Rob Bell, who's a pastor that came to speak to the team after, and talked about how that changed a lot of the ways that he thought about traditional religion. And in a place like Green Bay, a small Midwestern town where you have to imagine kind of like the small town that Aaron Rodgers grew up in Chico, California, like that's got to resonate in a very interesting way. Like, I'm wondering how well this all gets received by the public and by the fan base that Aaron Rodgers is immersed in there. I get that he's a great player, but this kind of runs counter to a lot of the Midwestern narrative around the people who would be supporting him.
And that was very interesting to me, the lack of fear to take a stand on controversial topics, and that's something that obviously we've talked a lot about in over the course of the last year. And the Colin Kaepernick situation has to be sort of said in the same breath, right? There is a point where athletes can, at times, have to make tough decisions on standing up and saying something, or and that can affect their marketability. It can affect sort of their image. And you do think about, with Aaron Rodgers, again, the discount double check era, I go back to that because it felt like he was on a path right there to just commercialize and market himself in this massive way. And then you see a much more thoughtful and thought-provoking version of Aaron Rodgers in this article. It's strange, not strange. It's got to be difficult for him. And you mentioned Jordan, I should say, in full disclosure. Obviously, Jordan and I have hosted a lot of shows together. Jordan's somebody we both know well. But Jordan goes on The Bachelorette, and I think that there's probably, as a result, some collateral damage anytime you are around somebody that's on a reality show, anytime you're around somebody in real life that reaches a certain level of celebrity. It can cause collateral damage. Parts of your life become sort of exposed that you may or may not have wanted. It's got to lead to some sort of a guarded feel for everybody in that process.
Yeah, because it changes everything for everyone in that family top to bottom. And when you become accustomed to living your life in the public vein, some things change. And you're right, sometimes they do bleed over into areas that most other people don't have to worry about dealing with. It becomes a big part of this.
And you can see that even, we talked about it on radio a couple of weeks ago, that Aaron Rodgers had referenced that he records his own interviews. Every time he's interviewed, he brings a recorder. Well, that was also apparent in Mina's article, that he came out and set down the recorder. And there's a level of you're not going to get me at the beginning of it that I think feels really interesting to see that from somebody in that status, of that status. And that's not common for quarterbacks, especially in the NFL. Quarterbacks in the NFL all seem to be these guys that everybody can easily rally around and bond together with.
Well, and you're used to being told as an athlete or someone that's in the public light, even in this industry, that the price you pay for fame and being well known is that you have to give up that privacy. And Aaron's saying, no, I'm going to take some of this back, because all through the course of this, I'm not really sure of who I am and what I want now that I achieved the top level of all this. Like, this article starts a lot of it with the fallout from winning the Super Bowl and realizing, all right, what I've built my whole life around, is this it? Is this what enough to satisfy me at this point? And you see some of Aaron's fears manifested in the response to this article. I go on Twitter, and what's trending in the U.S. but Aaron Rodgers, and the tagline under it says, speaks on Colin Kaepernick and the protest issues. You knew that was going to come out of this, and he was, again, thoughtful but very candid with how he spoke about Colin Kaepernick and the anthem protest and the plight of his African-American teammates. He talked about Ryan O'Callahan, who was his former teammate at Cal, recently retired lineman for the Patriots and Chiefs, who came out as gay in June, and talked about the bravery that took. And so spoke on a lot of these things, trying to downplay the severity of some of it, but also recognizing, like he says in the article, I want to not just live in the fishbowl. I want to be able to shine and be who I am in this in a way that feels difficult to do. There's a lot of conflict in what he's trying to say and how he's trying to say it.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. And it looks like we're eyeballing this situation with Joe Haden. It looks like the Steelers are expected to sign the former Browns corner to a 3-year deal. And as we look at that, we want to bring on one of our favorites to sort of break what it means down. Darren Woodson joins us, ESPN NFL analyst. And Darren, when you look at this, what does he mean to the Steelers at this point?
Well, it depends on what Joe Haden you're getting. I think the one Joe Haden we used to see 3 or 4 years ago was one of the more dominant cornerbacks in the league. Not only could he was multifaceted. Not only could he pressure at the line of scrimmage and take your number one guy away, but he was very good at playing off man at the same time. So he was a prolific corner 3 or 4 years ago. But because of the injuries that he's had, especially to the groin areas, in the core areas, he hasn't been able to flip his hips the same way, and we're not accustomed to seeing this guy get beat the way he's been getting beat in the last few years. I think it all depends on how healthy he is, how much time they take to get him 100% healthy, and where his mindset is. He lost a lot of confidence in the last couple of years because of the injuries, and that's my biggest concern. You know, what are they getting in return? Are they getting a guy that they can, you know, get fully healthy and then get him out there and expect to play one-on-one coverage, or are they getting damaged goods right now? But, you know, if they get Joe Haden at 85 to 90%, they got a very good cornerback on their hands.
And for Joe Haden, you go to a team that's actually in the mix to compete right now. But, Darren, when you look at the Browns and what they've been doing this offseason, they make this move. They also trade away their former first-round pick on the offensive line and Cameron Irving to the Chiefs for a fifth-round pick. Is this more of what we've seen this offseason, signaling that maybe the Browns actually have a plan for once?
Absolutely. I think they do. And listen, Jay, you know, Hayden's contract didn't match his play. I mean, let's just call it what it is right now. He had a big contract. The play that he was putting out there on the field wasn't conducive to that, and they had to make a change. And I think right now what you're seeing with the Cleveland Browns is that they're dumping these big salaries, trying to get as many picks as they can, and they have a plan on what they want to do. You know, the poor Joe Thomas who's sitting there watching all this at the same time. But this team right now knows that they're not going to be competitive this year, but they are planning for the future, and I do like to see that they finally have a plan on moving forward and what they want to get in. And for right now, listen, they're probably the worst. They're at the bottom as far as personnel. They have to get better as far as personnel is concerned, and the picks will allow them to get there.
We're talking to Darren Woodson, ESPN NFL analyst. So when you talk about that, I understand how cutting that money out makes them better long-term. But short-term going into this season, it obviously doesn't help the Browns. So the Browns essentially just tanking at this point so that they can get whatever they can.
Absolutely. I mean, they're not going to be competitive, and they know that. I mean, you look at what the transactions they've made and the things that they've done. You know, bringing Osweiler's contract over, basically buying a contract, and then getting rid of it for picks. I think that what we're seeing is a team, again, that has a plan. They know that this is going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. They're in a competitive division with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens right now. It's going to take them some time to get that personnel to where they like it. And I like Hugh Jackson. I like the fact that Hugh Jackson is saying, look, I got to scrap this thing, start it all over again. It feels like he probably has some time on his hand to make this happen. And you're seeing an influx of young talent to start this thing all over again. And you know, honestly, I know people are saying, well, they're taking it. I like the moves that they're making. They're getting rid of the big contracts they have, and they're trying to get good personnel in.
Darren, switching gears a little bit, looking at a team that you're certainly uniquely familiar with, the Cowboys in the midst of Zeke Elliott's appeal with the NFL, the NFLPA going to bat for him right now. What did you make of how strongly Jerry Jones has come out in support of Ezekiel Elliott? Because from where I sit, it seems like he's put himself out there almost more so than we hear from ownership in support of his player.
Yeah, you know, you got to know Jerry. For one, Jerry is I played there from 92 to 2005. The one thing I know about Jerry is he's going to rally behind his players to a fault. I mean, to a fault. He is loyal to not only his current players but his former players. He's always done that, and we all know what we were in the 1990s. We had a lot of issues with individuals. But Jones was always there to support his players to a fault, and I think that's what he's doing now. I mean, there's times I love the man so much that you always want to rally behind him, but there's sometimes he makes mistakes. And I think this one right now, not knowing the evidence, the full evidence, and what really took place, it's hard to back a guy that's had so many issues over the last year, whether it be with this domestic violence situation or bar fights in Dallas. There's been a lot that Zeke has brought to this football team right now. I think Jerry went out and said some things today that he probably wishes he could take back. I'm sure his daughter, Charlotte Jones, who's probably the most powerful woman in sports right now and does a great job not only nationally but in the Dallas area as far as supporting domestic violence and trying to fight that fight. But she's been integral in a lot of different ways, and I'm sure she's probably had this conversation with him. There's times that you have to back down, let the league do what it has to do, and move on from there. And honestly, I think this comes back to the 6-game suspension. I think the climate is what it is today in the league, and it's a zero tolerance. And I think it comes back to a 6-game suspension. And I think the Cowboys take it the way it is and move forward. I don't think it moves forward from this point on. I think it'll be a 6-game suspension, and they'll deal with it.
You guys can watch him on ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Darren Woodson 28. Darren, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on with us, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Great stuff with him. ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. Mike Golic Jr., when you think about Joe Haden, he's got to be the happiest man alive right now, right? He goes from the Browns to the Steelers. He gets a bunch of money, and he likely has the opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, listen, because when you look at the contract, what we're seeing from Adam Schefter reporting that the deal in the works would be 3 years, $27 million, including $7 million this year. And we were hearing reports, Ian Rappaport, saying that the Browns were coming to Joe Haden asking about a pay cut, asking him to go from the $11 million salary this year down to $7 million. And when you see that same $7 million pop up, you realize that part of this, as much as we say as a business can feel personal if you feel disrespected by that kind of offer, but also the chance to maybe get out. He mentioned Joe Thomas, and Joe's been very public about wanting to be there when this all turns, a very loyal guy from everything we hear out of Cleveland. And maybe part of it with Joe Haden is, man, I got a chance decent way into my career into this to go out and finally get to play for something meaningful, and part of that might be refreshing.
Yeah, I can't fault him at all.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
And it's the right time, Bomani Jones. 888-SAY-ESPN, that's 888-729-3776. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can get in touch with the two of us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Golic Jr., Golic Jr., I should say, 57. I'm at Jason Fitz. So, Mike, part of what I love about what we do is that we get to come in and do like huge cartwheels over massive news, right? And then when that news changes in 72 hours, we get to come in and do cartwheels again. So we get to go back and forth with lots of cartwheels, especially over this entire trade happening in the NBA, where Kyrie Irving looks to be headed to Boston and Isaiah Thomas looks to be headed from Boston to Cleveland. And, we're looking at it and we're jumping up and down like maniacs. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, looks like the trade may be falling through due to health concerns with Isaiah Thomas. And that allows us to jump up and down about it all over again. So we get to react to this. But the more I think about it, the tougher this is, especially on Isaiah Thomas, because at some point he has to come out and now defend himself. Here's a guy that wasn't looking to be traded, wasn't looking to make a statement about his health, was just looking to play basketball. He's traded, and then the trade is essentially, at this point, according to reports, possibly going to be blocked because of the health. Now he has to come out and defend himself when it comes to the issue of his hip. I cannot imagine what that feels like today for him.
Well, for a guy who also, after next season, is going to be facing down the barrel of free agency and the idea of trying to get to that massive payday that he's talked about very openly during his time with the Celtics, about trying to get to that max contract that he believes is a guy who's now a multiple-time All-Star and took that team to an Eastern Conference Finals appearance last year, believes he's due. So this is very much a calculated response to that idea of my value is getting hit hard in the public right now. I've got to say something.
Well, and that's an unfortunate situation to be in, but it is the situation he's in, and now he's having to justify it. So our own Woj, earlier ESPN NBA insider, was on Sports
Say his name. I want to hear you say his name.
This is what happens. This is why I drink. Adrian Wojnarowski came in, and I did it so quick that counts.
You can't just brush it under the rug anymore. The guy's been here for months. Respect Adrian Wojnarowski. I say his name.
I see. I think you're wrong. I still think you're wrong. I think it's Wojnarowski.
I think you're pronouncing it wrong as we go along. I think you're crumbling under the pressure of his incredible professionalism. Tell him what Woj said.
This is what Woj had to say.
Isaiah did not suggest to me that he knows precisely when he'll be able to return and play this season, but based on his consultation with doctors over the last several months, he fully believes that he will play this season, and he will once again be at an all-star level. And that's certainly his mindset here as he waits for Boston and Cleveland to try to finish up this deal.
There's not much else that Adrian Wojnarowski can say, ESPN NBA insider. On top of that, I'm just saying it your way now because it's easier just to give in to you, Mike.
It's not my way. It's the right way.
Sure. No, it's the right time with Bomani Jones. See what I did there? He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz.
Mark that down, Cat.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, for those at home, we're keeping score of all the mistakes that Jason Fitz makes right now. His local radio producer has requested this because they want to shame him the way that we have been shaming you here, and it's only right to let everyone else in on the fun. So if you hear a mistake, point it out and tweet at him.
This is such fantastic radio. Thank you so much, Mike Golic Jr. I appreciate it.
I don't want to leave people in the dark.
So Woj came out and makes that statement, but there's not much else that can be said there, right? He has to come out at some point, and he has to start defending himself because he needs to be proactive in asserting what his value is going to be. You're absolutely right. This is about next year's contract.
But he also didn't lie. He came out and he said there's never been an indication that I wouldn't be back, and there's never been an indication that this is something messing up my career. He then said, maybe I'm not going to be back as soon this season as everyone wants me to be, but I'm going to be back and I'm going to be the same player. No doctor has told me anything different. So he made that point that no doctor has said long-term that this is going to damage me, but this also didn't go much further in refuting that idea that Cleveland, who very much has an interest of getting him on the court as early as they can this year to A, show LeBron James that they're serious about the future, but B, kind of figure out if Isaiah Thomas is a guy that they want to think about potentially signing on depending on all this shakes out. So that part of their worries weren't quelled at all by this.
I mean, at some point, you got to look at Isaiah and feel like he's in a bit of a pickle, like he's in a bit of an artisanal pickle right here, because at some point, he's got to come back fast enough. That doesn't count either. He's got to come back fast enough that he can prove that he's worth the max contract he wants. He wants a super max contract. He's going to be eligible for a super max contract. So he either waits as long as it takes, and by waiting as long as it takes, he gives them less body of work to decide if they're going to sign him long term, right? He either does that or he rushes himself back and may not play as well as he wants to. So he's stuck in a can't-win situation. The only thing he can do right now is reassure so that people can give him patience, because what's best for him long term is to wait as long as possible to get the body healthy.
It's a constant dilemma that you fight with as an athlete anytime you've got injuries and trying to figure out how fast do I come back, because usually the pressure's from the other side. Usually it's your team telling you, all right, like this week, is it going to be now? They're talking to the trainers, they're talking to the doctors, seeing how quick they can get you back on the court. And to IT's point, this is an injury that got aggravated towards the end of the season, but one that he played through as long as he could until it was so aggravated, until his rotator was so aggravated that he couldn't possibly go on anymore. But also quick to point out that this wasn't something that required surgery that always makes this a different can of worms. Once you cut into somebody, you know you're dealing with an entirely different deck. And he's also again, none of this is by accident. Like, he didn't lie in what he said, but he's also making it very clear they didn't cut me. They didn't cut me open, and this is not supposed to affect me long term.
The phone number, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Neil in California. Neil, what do you got?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Love the show, especially Mike Golic Jr. with Stugatz on Sundays. You guys have me rolling. However, I'm going to try to speak as unbiased as possible, being a Celtics fan. But the way these events have unfolded just reeks of one of LeBron's ingenious mind games, where he sees the end of the road coming. The Cavaliers don't have that many in the way of assets going forward, especially to get new blooded talent in there for this coming up playoff run. And it just looks like he's trying to drag another team, especially the team he went to the Eastern Conference Finals against this past year, into the mud and wrestle with them a little bit. And now they're entertaining the Bucks offer if this one just, quote unquote, happens to fall through. I just don't see what it seems like Danny Ainge wouldn't risk his entire credibility of Ford and Fox information of Isaiah Thomas and his injury concerns to them, that they shouldn't have seen anything more than what kind of, damaged goods, quote unquote, they were getting from the Celtics. What do you guys think about all this?
That's a heck of a conspiracy theory, Neil. Thanks for the call, man.
Yeah. Listen, we all like to joke and take liberties with the amount of power that LeBron's got in Cleveland, but for a guy that's already rumored to be on the way out, I don't know why this would be part of either the parting gift or curse in all of this, the idea that he would be the one trying to actively get more for the Cavaliers here and all this seems like a bit much for me to entertain.
Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN NBA insider, now I'm just showing off, on SportsCenter, talked about where these two teams are in their negotiation process. This is what he had to say.
Boston and Cleveland spoke a few times yesterday. We're expected to speak again today. Boston had not fully relented that they were going to give Cleveland something. That's still a negotiation. But Cleveland has become, I think, more realistic in what they may be able to get from Boston. And if Cleveland could get out of this with a draft pick or maybe one or two picks in the second round, they'd call it a day here. This deal would get done.
If you're the Celtics, do you throw in a second rounder just to end this thing and get it done?
I think so, because, again, I'll go back to what I said yesterday. I think more of the pressure is on them to try and move this asset while they can get something for him, because if he's not going to be on the court as soon as you think, or there's a chance it could affect him this year, that starts to drop that value that's at a fever pitch after last season and what he was able to produce. And that also kind of debunks the LeBron trying to meddle in all this, because if you're LeBron and for whatever reason you were trying to meddle in all this, wouldn't you have held out and said, no, you're going to give us Jason Tatum or one of those young guys for this season, or we're just going to walk this back and we've got other people willing to offer?
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Mike Golic Jr., I'm Jason Fitz, and it's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed.
That's what happens when you make bad jokes, Fitz. They come back to bite you in the bum back.
No, see, you would have to think that I'm dissatisfied with this song. I love this being on. I have a horribly vapid musical taste. Remember, I mean,
seriously, when did this song come out? When was Khalees actually hot? Like, when was this? Because you made a reference to this song that's got to be at least 6 years old, at least. Yeah. Maybe more, right? Is that more than that?
It might be.
2003. All right, never mind. 6.
2003, that makes it classic.
That's a 14-year-old reference.
So that means I made a classic reference.
Is Milkshake a classic? Put that on the poll.
Definitely. Because if you walk into a room of people and say, hey, your milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, they all know what you're talking about.
They're going to boo you out of the room if you say that, and I'd hope they would.
Not in my America.
Fitz, I get your sneak 40, but you don't got to act like it. You look young. You can fake it.
Whatever. All I'm saying is that if I was at the club, as the kids say, in Vegas, and if they popped up one of these fresh remixes of that song, I just
you said fresh and the kids in the same sentence. You are actively torpedoing yourself.
Yeah, I'm trolling you like you millennials do to all of us old people. So if the kids heard a fresh, hot remix of that song, bam, the club would be popping. I just had to do all that for you. That was all for Mike Golic Jr. I feel so bad about it. The only thing I can do is bring you flowers. Nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. When Mike Golic Jr. is frustrated with me, it's what I do. I just send him to him. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely free. Just go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Now, we'd be able to send the whole world flowers if we thought of this idea. Because we were just talking about Isaiah Thomas, what team's he going to play on next year. You're worried about it. You want to get your jersey if you're one of those sports fans that likes to wear all of the current hip jerseys. Well, Mike, we should have thought of this. There's now a company that's allowing sports fans to rent jerseys of their favorite teams for a monthly fee.
It's like an extension of what we saw for a long time with video rental stores. GameStop's been doing this forever, all along the way. Now, as you look at clothing rental service, like Rent the Runway is something that I know a lot of our female colleagues use here and is tremendously helpful, is like something that doesn't leave you bound to a lot of expensive designer stuff. And we know jerseys can become expensive. Like that's a real hit for a lot of people. And more so than anything in today's world of sports where free agency is such a big factor and so many guys are changing spots, like this seems perfectly timed.
So the company's called Rep the Squad, and it's monthly subscriptions that allow fans to pick what jerseys they want to wear and have the items sent to them one at a time. When a jersey is returned in a prepaid envelope, the next jersey in their queue or locker is sent out. So it really is. It's like Rent the Runway meets Netflix for jerseys. If you're old enough like me to remember when Netflix actually sent DVDs, that's exactly what this is. But it's a fantastic idea because think about this. If your favorite player, I live in Nashville, the Nashville Predators had a star emerge last season, Victor Arvidsson. You're welcome, NHL guy. And so hockey guy knows that Victor Arvidsson last year was number 38. Well, he just changed his number to number 33. So now all of the people that went out and bought a Victor Arvidsson jersey, it's no good. They got to go out and get a new Victor Arvidsson jersey. You wouldn't have to do that. I mean, that makes this a sensational idea. As much as players shift teams or can change numbers or you want different seasons, you want different jerseys, this gives you total flexibility. This is amazing.
So my question is now, looking at the cost and the way it breaks down. So it's $19.95 a month for adults, $16.95 a month for kids for the subscription. So that comes out to what, about $240 per year for unlimited access to jerseys, and it takes good care of you. Like, it leaves room for wear and tear. If you return a jersey that's stained or a little dirty, they'll dry clean it at no extra cost to you. So they're incurring that right now. They've got 4 teams. They've got the company will have jerseys for the fans of the 49ers, Seahawks, and the Lions. They're hoping to get into all major pro sports teams eventually, but they're starting off there. So, is the value there for you? Would you be comfortable spending $240 a year as a fan to have access to any jersey you want when you want?
It's okay. So that's a little pricey for me. As you know, I'm frugal. Okay, I'm a little tight with the cash, but I look at that and say the only thing that concerns me. You mentioned the dry cleaning. I eat like a child, so I'm not sure that I can actually keep my food and alcohol off of me during game day. So. That A is a big concern for me, but B, I don't know. It gets so weird when you're talking about your favorite football team because many people also have their favorite player on that team. So you've got the complication of not only if you want a Raiders jersey, do you want a Derek Carr jersey or a Khalil Mack jersey or a Amari Cooper jersey? So I could see where it gives you some flexibility, though. 1 week you can have one of each. So it allows you to have a little bit of runaround. It's a little pricey for me, but I like it.
I mean, I'm looking online right now at NFLshop.com, and the Lions are one of the teams mentioned in this. And so I looked on and I just quickly searched Matthew Stafford. And a Matthew Stafford Nike Blue 2017 game jersey goes for $99.99 retail. So it's $100 for one jersey. And all of a sudden you can pay $240 and for the whole year have access to, like you said, all of those different jerseys. You're covered in case of anything that changed like that. So I don't know. To me, there seems to be some value there.
Well, okay, so Shannon, are you in on this or are you out on this?
Shannon, we can't hear you.
I do agree with you that it is a bit pricey, but it's a great idea, though. I mean, I am in.
Okay.
To have the ability to wear all of these different jerseys if you are a jersey person, all the games. Like, imagine, too, like, if you're a baseball fan, you got, like, season tickets, and that's, like, 80-something home games a year. And you can have 80-something different jerseys every game.
You can start to this. You know what plays perfect for hipsters? Like, you can play deep cut and go like a backup offensive lineman for this one.
Absolutely.
Like, you could have been out at a Cleveland game before that trade, repping a Cam Irving jersey on your back, like it was your job. Like, yeah, I remember who we drafted in the first round a few years ago.
I think it's a little concerning, though, the fair weather fan. You know, it allows somebody to decide whoever's playing well, bam, can just wear that jersey that week. I mean, we're sort of allowing that to happen. I don't love that side of it.
The NFL's already promoted that, by the way. You remember that commercial, that ad they ran a while back with that family where the kids just go off into life and suddenly just give up their fandom for when they were kids and start adopting teams from their wives' team or where they live now or the person they met in college? Like, that family had no intestinal fortitude. I do not want those people on whatever my side is.
The other question, too, is, like, if you're going to wear a jersey to a game or to a game day, you got to have the right shoes with it, right? You can't just wear a jersey and random shoes. Like, there's some coordination that has to happen there. It all has to like Bomani has his shoe collection. I feel like his jersey collection should be as equally as epic if you're going to do that. I'd be spending the $240 a year to get all these different jerseys, but I can't imagine what my shoe budget would suddenly become, because then I'd have to have the right shoes for each individual jersey.
Listen, if you're not about that life before you start putting on these jerseys, you won't be about it after. Like, that's one of those things that's not going to change you. It's just going to expose the person that you already are.
You can be slightly about that. Like, you can be a little about that life. You're dipping your toe in those waters, but then all of a sudden you find yourself getting a new jersey every week. That means you're going to have to go out and get the new shoes every week. Whereas you could, if you just had the one, you've just got the one, really, that one pair of shoes that you only wear on a particular day, so that everyone always thinks you have like the absolute nicest, like the newest on your feet every time.
Nah, man, listen, for me, shoe money's got to be like casino money. I'm not taking more to that than I'm willing to lose. Like, that's my rule when I go to the casino. I take the exact dollar amount I'm comfortable with giving away for a night of entertainment. Same with shoes. Like, I didn't start buying shoes like I have now until I started getting my own money. Like, I wasn't going to spend mom and dad's money on a nice sneaker collection. But once I started getting money and I found, all right, I've got enough extra, then you feel comfortable. Like, all right, I won't miss this. If you start getting all these jerseys and you've got some newfound money on the back end that you're not spending on jerseys now, that's cool. But don't go too far with all this.
Sage financial advice on how to get the jersey to match the shoes.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. You guys know ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot. Even if you have insurance with another company, see how much you can save before you switch. All our guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Excited for this one. Fantastic article up there on ESPN.com right now, also on ESPN the magazine. Our very own Mina Kimes joins us. Mina, great work, first and foremost, on this thing. When you sat down with Aaron Rodgers, what surprised you the most in this process of putting this piece together?
Well, I was still recovering from the surprise of having him at my house, because I only found out the night before. So, and that's never happened. I've never interviewed an athlete or anyone at my house, so I wasn't really sure like what the protocol is for that. I mentioned earlier I went out and bought snacks, because I guess I should have snacks. Like, the whole thing was so surreal. I still kind of can't believe it happened that way.
As a married man, anytime my friends are coming over, my wife will spend like 3 hours re-cleaning the house, even if it doesn't need it. So I can't imagine. Is there like this chaotic moment where you're shoving everything in a room? Because that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, I was definitely like, okay, he won't go into this room. I have a small house, but it was too late to get someone to clean it, so I just vacuumed like crazy. I have a dog. There's dog hair everywhere. I don't know why. I was like, he's not going to judge me for not being a clean house. But, yeah, there was also a very awkward moment, I'll tell you guys. He came in, so I have a small living room with a sofa, and then about 15 feet away is an armchair. So he sits in the armchair, but I'm like, that's too far for the recorder. So I kind of awkwardly pat the sofa next to me. I'm like, I guess I'm going to do this on the sofa, man. So he kind of laughed and came over and sat next to me.
The very sensual sofa pat that I'm sure was nice and off-putting, trying to figure out in that moment. Was it kind of hard to navigate? Like, did it make it hard for you to get back in your game? As this guy almost, it seems like, was playing psychologically with you as much as anything in this, just by putting it on your turf to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's astute. When it happened, I was a little, not annoyed, but I was a little bit concerned, because I didn't want to write myself into the story. And I kind of knew I had to, because I can't lie about where it's taking place, right? So as we were doing it, I was trying to figure out why we were there. I mean, the privacy thing occurred to me. He's obviously super private. But, he's kind of asking about some of my stuff. And then I was like, oh, he's kind of like tasting me a little bit, too. And that was interesting as well.
Yeah, so, Mina, I guess in that vein, too, because all of what you communicated very well in this piece was that Aaron seems to want to be at the same time very private and is very guarded because of how public so much of his life has been, but also is now coping with this newfound desire to show himself. How did that manifest itself when you were with him and together with him? How much was that tension palpable?
It was super palpable, and it's something I think a lot of us, especially private people, deal with, which is this idea that, if you don't talk, other people will, which I think has been his experience over the last 2 years, and it's probably a huge part of the reason why he agreed to do it, not going to beat around that. And then I think just in his answers, because he really likes to think before he speaks, for what it's worth. And it's not a political thing so much that it is he wants that time, but in a live interview, you don't get that much time. So I could feel his brain like just turning before every answer, not because he wanted to be banal. He answered all my questions, but just because he wanted to get it right, which is, I think, very unique to his personality.
We're talking to Mina Kimes, who wrote a fantastic piece that's on ESPN.com right now about Aaron Rodgers. And Mina, I've only had a couple of opportunities to interact with Aaron, and it's been years ago in the music world, and he always seemed very lighthearted. When I read your piece, it was sort of stunning to me how different that seems. Is there any sense of that you got? That was there a turning point where he sort of changed in that process?
Yeah, he's super funny, which I think people kind of know, but it's kind of hard to make a ton of jokes when you're talking about religion and the meaning of life. So, there would be like moments where he would joke around, and he's super dry too, which I actually think might have some part of the reason why he's a little bit wary of interviews and such, because that doesn't always come across right in a written interview. Because he's just like a sarcastic, funny dude. But yeah, and then afterwards, when we were driving away from my house, after I had got him a ticket, which I've talked about a little bit, he was really funny, and he definitely is witty, I guess I would say.
All right, Mina, I want to give you plenty of time for this, because this is ever since you told me this story a while ago, and I was blown away. So I want everyone to be able to appreciate all of this. What was the scariest moment in all of this that came after the article was written for you?
All right, you're getting this exclusive story of my idiocy. So, I pitched a story a long time ago to Aaron and his folks, and it was like a long time in the making. And he finally said yes in like June or something, I want to say. And I was really excited because it was something I had been hoping to do. He hadn't done a story in a long time. So I'm really trying not to screw it up, not to say anything stupid, not to tell anyone. So literally the night before our interview, I'm just like, I'm almost there. Like, I'm down the home stretch, this is happening. It's really happening. I kept thinking he would cancel. So the night before the interview, I'm on Twitter. Like, all the terrible stories now start that way, right? The night I'm on Twitter. So I was just like haphazardly looking at tweets, and I saw two girls I know, Katie Nolan and our Diana Rossini, were like tweeting at each other about like going on a girls trip. So I didn't even check the context, again, like really coming across well in the story. And I write back to them, I'm like, hey, where's my invite, or something stupid. I don't know. Go to bed. I don't even think about it. I wake up, and this is literally right before interview. I wake up, and my mentions are like blowing up. So I'm like, why are people tweeting at me about Olivia Munn? And I didn't see that their thread had started with something about Olivia Munn. I don't know Olivia Munn. I don't know her from Adam. Her girls trip, I guess. And she had tweeted back at me during the night, can't wait for our girls trip. So literally the night before my interview with Aaron Rodgers, I've been waiting for months, his ex is tweeting at me about going on a girls trip. And I'm just like, no! I wake up, and you guys, I'm like, did I just jeopardize like this huge interview by jumping in a Twitter thread without looking at what it was? And now it looks like I'm going on a girls trip. I was literally sitting like frozen in terror for hours.
That's fantastic. Did you mention it to him?
No, I didn't. I was so like, is he going to see it? Is he going to think I'm like friends? I don't know her. I literally have zero opinion about this woman. I was just, oh my gosh. I didn't tell him. I don't know.
So now that the article's gone over really well and it's gone off without a hitch, I know you mentioned a lot that he reads the articles and you'll find out if he's happy with it. Do you double back around and see if Olivia is what she's talking about this girls trip still?
I was with our girls trip. That's what you said to me when I told you the story. You'd go on with me on a girls trip.
Hey, listen, I stand by that, too. I think I'd be an excellent addition to any girls trip. So we'll set that up sometime soon, Mina.
I still want my invite. Now I feel left out. Guys, read the article. Read the article on ESPN.com. Read it in ESPN, the magazine. Follow her on Twitter, at Mina Kimes. Mina, great job on that article. It's really fantastic stuff. Thanks for giving us some time today.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Mina.
That was Mina's just the best.
Yeah, no, she's the best Twitter follow at our company. And by the way, just because I'm also a part of this, but the Nickel Package, ESPN's newest NFL podcast, Mina and Dominique are hosting the Thursday edition of that podcast. They'll be doing that tomorrow. And shameless plug, I will be hosting the Friday version. But you can check her and Dominique out there tomorrow, in addition to ESPN, the Mag, and all the other platforms she is on.
Ooh.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
It looks like we have an update. We have some breaking news. A source has told ESPN's Josina Anderson that the suspension of Cincinnati's Vontaze Burfict has been reduced from 5 games to 3. So it is now a 3-game suspension for the hit in a preseason game. Golic Jr., you have any strong thoughts one way or the other on the reduction of that?
This is about what I expected. I didn't think this suspension was going to hold up at the length that it was set at, just because by the letter of the law, I don't think he was guilty of. We talked about it. There was a change in the rule this year as far as hits on a defenseless player. They added receivers within 5 yards of the line to that rule. Any contact, either from behind to the side, to the head or neck, would qualify you for this kind of punishment. And looking at the hit more closely, none of those things were true about it. This is rather a hit that was largely unnecessary given the context and done by a guy who basically is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award now.
Lifetime. I like the way we termed that. And this is one of the consequences of a preseason game. I mean, at some point, if you're the Bengals, you're looking at it and saying a hit in a preseason game is now costing us one of our better players for 3 games in the regular season. So this is sort of the worst case scenario for them. But it has been reduced from 5 to 3, sources have told Josina Anderson.
It's so weird, too, that it is coming out of a preseason game. Because I remember you don't often associate the actions with a preseason game with something like this, but some guys do. I remember there were guys in the preseason I played with that would not, guys that were undrafted free agents like me, so you don't come in with a big signing bonus or anything like that. You're not in money until you get to the season. And I remember guys were like, I'm not cutting anyone, because on the off chance, that was when the NFL was putting an emphasis on guys cutting down defensive linemen from the side while you were engaged, used to be legal. They're like, I'm not cutting guys because I can't afford that fine right now. I'm not making anything. You find out that they only fine you once you get to the regular season and once you start picking up those big boy checks, but it can scare you at times. And so to see real ramifications for the action of a preseason game isn't necessarily going to make people, veterans, coaches, anyone else, feel better about the continued prospect of 4 preseason games.
Well, as the suspension has been reduced, all of this from the preseason, we have to look at somebody that's taken the preseason by storm. Christian McCaffrey, Carolina, had a fantastic preseason, and it's one of those moments where I don't think anybody's surprised, right? This is a guy that was obviously a star at the college level, and then as the draft started to come closer, people became more and more aware of that star power if they weren't a college football fan. By the time that he was drafted, the hype train was sort of out of control, but this is one of those moments where the hype train, it seems to be the right thing. And I will say this, the Panthers were down here in Tennessee, where I am, with joint practices with the Titans, and he looks phenomenal. He looks incredible in practice. And head coach Ron Rivera actually talked about what McCaffrey is and what kind of player he is. This is what he had to say.
This young man is special. I mean, he really is. I mean, Christian's done a great job assimilating to life in the NFL, assimilating to the way we do things, picking up our offense, and he's done a great job. And again, going back to the Jacksonville game, when you look at one of the plays that was out there, Cam went through his progression, and his last opportunity was to check down to Christian, which he turned into about a 12-yard gain. I mean, that's kind of what you hope for. That's what you kind of look for. And he's shown that he has that kind of ability to be that presence that the quarterback can have confidence that, hey, if I don't have what I want downfield and I can hit it to this young man, he's going to pick up those yards that we need. And he's been outstanding as far as learning and understanding and just being part of what we're trying to do.
That's Carolina head coach Ron Rivera on Mike and Mike. So, Mike Golic Jr., I ask you, is there some shift that's beginning right now that we're about to see where Christian McCaffrey becomes the focal point and the star of the Panthers offense?
A shift to my fantasy dynasty.
It all comes back to that.
The third pick for my team, my fantasy draft, none other than the sensation, Christian McCaffrey. Deceptive speed himself, in the flesh, making it happen. So proud to hear that. And listen, from an unbiased source like his head coach and Ron Rivera, I feel like we should all take that very seriously and understand that we're dealing with a force of nature. But no, in all seriousness, I understand the insinuation, because it's been weird to listen all offseason to this idea that right as they draft this guy, a rookie a guy that wasn't the top running back even taken, but one they clearly valued, and said, now we're trying to rework the offense. We want a more of an intermediate passing game. We want more of these checkdowns like he talked about, all sort of built around, whether it's just implied or explicitly stated, around the skill set of Christian McCaffrey, as opposed to your former MVP quarterback who, maybe does this tell us more about the injury? Maybe does this tell us more about how much they're trying to value him going forward? I'm not sure exactly which one of those takes priority.
I look at it at some point and say, okay, for example, in Jacksonville, they draft Leonard Fournette. That's obviously partially to protect whatever Blake Bortles is as a quarterback, whatever that experiment is. But when you start talking about retooling an offense that was built specifically around Cam Newton, and you're talking about what Cam Newton does particularly well, he's not an accurate passer. And last year was his worst in that category, 53% completion. Not a good year for him when it comes to actually being accurate with the football. So if you bring in somebody like Christian McCaffrey, how is that helping Cam Newton? I mean, even if it's helping him as a weapon running the football, how is it helping him in anything that Cam does when it comes to throwing the football?
Well, I think it gives him an option and a range. I mean, listen, part of the reason that traditional accuracy is a raw stat hasn't treated Cam well is because that's been a shot play offense, right? Like we talked about him helping revive the career of Ted Ginn Jr. during that MVP season, who's boom or bust as far as the go routes go, but that was what Cam was asked to do there. And so now they're saying, all right, listen, if we want our quarterback to take less shots in the pocket, because that was something that came up a lot last year, is Cam being protected enough in the pocket like other quarterbacks. If we want to get the ball out of his hands sooner, if we want to try and help him in that regard, what's a great way to do that? The way a lot of people are. You've already got a tight end who's a mismatch in the middle of the field, a 1,000-yard receiver every year. Now you've got a running back who can go out there and give linebackers and safeties the business as a dump-off valve for him. That's another feather in his cap.
Do you think realistically Cam Newton is an accurate enough passer in short and medium range passes to actually thrive in that sort of a system?
Listen, I don't know if we've got enough evidence of it yet one way or the other, but I think Cam Newton's a talented enough guy to where he can adapt to this. The question becomes is, as you start to lean on this and move away from what Cam does as part of your design run game, how does he adjust to that? How does the frustration mount from that if it's a position where Cam thinks he can help out there, but the Panthers are rightly protecting their principal investment, the guy playing the quarterback spot, who's got the most unique set of skills in the quarterback position we've ever seen. The most gifted physical skill set we've ever seen as far as that and how unique he is. Yeah, I think it's an interesting shift in the offense. It's one that I don't know maximizes what Cam's able to do and what makes him special.
Well, Ron Rivera talked about the process this morning when he was on with Mike and Mike that they've had this offseason with Cam. This is what Coach Ron Rivera had to say.
With everything we were supposed to do, we were going to open up training camp with him throwing, which we did. Probably what happened was we probably got a little carried away with ourselves as coaches and as players. You know how we tend to, hey, it's going great, let's keep going. Next thing you know, he came in one day and he looked like he was a little lethargic, and trainer started talking to him and found out his shoulder was sore. And so we went and saw the doctor. Doctor said, look, you've thrown hard. This is what's going on. We're going to shut you down for 4 days. So we did. We shut him down. He had him stretching, rehabbing, doing all the little things. And then he started the throwing program all over. He made us start from the beginning, and we had to work our way back up. So for the most part, he's where he needs to be right now. We're pretty excited about it. He's done a really good job. He really has, and staying involved with the thing. So we're targeting San Francisco, obviously, and we feel really good. I mean, he looked great the other night. Really pleased with that. We had 3 really good days of practice this week.
So when you hear that, Mike, and you think about what this means, obviously it's not an unbiased source, but do you feel like we're going to see at the end of this year, direct question, are we going to see an offense that's keyed around Cam Newton or around Christian McCaffrey?
Yes. Both.
You can't give me both.
No, listen, I think, it all still starts and ends with the quarterback, but I think you feature McCaffrey as prominently as he allows you to. I mean, like I said, running backs and tight ends that are pass-catching options are the currency of the future in the NFL as you look to continually try and create mismatches with the defense. You were able to do that with Cam in the run game for a long time, but you understand that now that there's been some sort of letdown for him as Teflon Cam, the guy who I thought during his MVP season was just flat out indestructible. Like, you can't run goal line power with anyone else in the league but Cam. That was insane to watch. As a guy who blocked for a lot of quarterbacks, that is insane to watch. I remember staring across the sideline at Cam Newton preseason 4 when we played them my rookie year with the Steelers and looking at this guy and going, what is that? Like, maybe I'm not cut out for this because he jogs past you on the field. I remember talking to Ryan Clark about it in this building, and that was the moment where he said, man, this might feel like the time to hang him up. Like, I don't know if I'm built for that kind of guy coming to the second level, playing quarterback, ready to hit you. So, yeah, I still think you can build around that guy and use it more in spot duty, but not having that difference-making ability for Cam the way it was for so long is going to hold this offense back to some extent. It's just a matter of now, can McCaffrey pick up that slack?
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. All of our guests appear by the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You know you can get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Always gold status. This guy, Marcus Spears, joining us, ESPN college football analyst and the new co-host of Thinking Out Loud with Greg McElroy that debuts on Labor Day on the SEC Network. First and foremost, Marcus, congratulations on the new show, man.
Appreciate it, brothers. I know we are going down the drain. ESPN is really going down the drain. They let us three get together. So I know for sure that this is the final curtain call, and it'll only be one season of Thinking Out Loud because Fitz, Golic Jr., and Spears are on at the same time.
I feel like this is magic that's just going to take the world by storm, Marcus. So speaking of taking the world by storm, Florida names Felipe Franks their starting quarterback. Are they going to take the world by storm with him at the helm?
We shall see, man. Once again, Mac proved me wrong. He wasn't going to name anybody, but I'm assuming some good news needed to come out after everything that's going on at Florida right now. Obviously, it's been, we talked about the Zaire when he transferred, and I thought that's always usually a telltale sign that a guy has a leg up on the spot. I talked to Chris Doring, one of our analysts here at SEC Network last week, and he said Malik hadn't really asserted himself in that battle, and he actually thought it would be Luke Del Rio, going back just because of comfort and knowing the playbook, and you got a large sample size of what he can do on the field. But the fact that it's Felipe, man, it tells you that it either tells you this. It either tells you that he outperformed both of the other guys, or it was about even, and why not go with the youngster and see what he can do and see if he can progress and get better as the season goes along.
No, certainly seems to be some of that there. And now, how much can we expect from Florida in that SEC East? We talk about it being the year of the quarterback in the SEC. Where does this put them relative to everyone else, especially considering they've been a quarterback away the last couple of years, it feels like?
MG, I'm telling you, you have no idea, man, because, look, this is Florida's, fifth quarterback in 4 years. They were having success with Will Greer 2 years ago. We all know what happened there. And then you go Luke Del Rio, you go Austin Appleby. You had a run there with Treon Harris. And now this is Felipe's squad, as Jim said. And you just don't know what the future of the position is if this guy doesn't pan out. You go back to Luke, you go back to Malik, but you still have Felipe there for the next couple of years. And if he doesn't work out, does his confidence shatter? Does he use it as a learning experience and come back and get better? A lot of these questions that need to be answered. The one thing you have confidence with, though, is that Jim McElwain has made the best out of a mess of a quarterback situation since he got to Florida. Created some stability. Guy had used the banned substance. Created stability. Luke Del Rio goes out with an injury. Austin Appleby comes in, older guy, transfer. He's gone now. So you bring in Malik Zaire as a transfer. You have Luke back. You say, well, he rehabbed all off season. He's supposed to be healthy. And now you got the youngster Felipe Franks coming and taking the helm. So you would have confidence with all of the things that's going on that you look and you see Florida has went to Atlanta back-to-back. So if you have any confidence in a new quarterback being ushered in, you got to go with Jim McElwain as it stands right now.
We're talking ESPN college football analyst Marcus Spears. And when you think about this, especially for the Michigan matchup, do you expect that the other quarterbacks will still get some set plays in that game?
Fitz, that's the thing that it's got to be a package in there. I would think for Malik more so than Luke, because Luke is a pocket passer. I don't know what you would change up when he came in the game. Felipe is athletic, though, and he can move around the pocket a little bit and get out and get a 3rd and 7. You would think that Malik would have a little package with his athletic ability, but that's not what Jim McElwain has been known to do. He's been known to ride with one guy until either the wheels fall off or a guy get injured and you bring somebody else in. So, yeah, saying that they have a package for Malik Zaire, which you probably do if you want to get him implemented in the game. But I think with a young quarterback like Felipe, there's no sense if he's rolling to pull him to try to run something that you want to run or see something that you want to see with Malik Zaire. So I just don't see a reason for it right now. You always have different plans for your quarterbacks, usually based on their skill set. But if Felipe is going to be the guy, you don't mess that up by trying to create something for Malik to come in the game.
Talking to Marcus Spears in the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Marcus, I want to bounce 2 statements off you that conflict with each other about the Week 1 matchup that everyone's talking about between Alabama and Florida State. On one hand, you got Paul Feinbaum, your boy P-Town, coming out and saying the other day on Mike and Mike that he doesn't believe this game is as impactful as everyone wants to make it out to be, that both these teams can absorb a loss and still be national championship contenders. Then you have our own Heather Dinich, who comes out and tweets that no team has won a national title after losing the season opener since Miami did it in 1983. So which side of the fence do you fall on with this? How much impact do you think this one outcome is going to have on the season for these two teams?
I'm on the side of Feinbaum because I don't think we've seen a matchup out of the gate like this maybe since 83. You legitimately talking about 2 teams. I mean, Bama had to run the table 2 years ago after they lost to Ole Miss. They had to run the table. They ran the table this past year. So you know that they have the capabilities of doing it. And then Florida State, when you look at the ACC, yeah, you got Clemson there. Everybody's talking about NC State is supposed to be better. But really, it's going to be either Florida State or Clemson. So whoever wins that game, regardless of if Florida State lost to Alabama, they'll be going into the college football play or the ACC championship with only one loss, and that would be to Alabama. So I see it like that. I've always seen it like that, even when they came out. And then you're talking about 2 teams that's 1-3 right now. So the team that suffers the first loss, how far are they really going to fall? They're going to have the strength of schedule behind them. They're going to have the team behind them, the coach, all of the things that we've seen this college football playoff made up of. They're going to have all of that going down the road. Everyone still is going to have to play everybody. So, yeah, you say, what if USC run the table? What if Washington runs the table in the Pac-12? Whatever. Somebody's going to catch a loss that may be ahead of the guy that loses this game week 1. That's the nature. Like, how many teams have we seen go undefeated other than Alabama last year until they lost in the national championship? I don't see it being as impactful when you start talking about the college football playoff picture, because whatever team loses this game is still going to be one of the top 5 teams in the country, and whatever team loses this game is still going to have an opportunity to win their league and go through a league where people consider those wins big wins just by default of who's on the schedule. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be that impactful going down the road. Now, if you catch another loss, you can go ahead and put yourself to sleep. Night, partner.
You guys can follow him on Twitter at mspears96. Be sure to check out the new show with Greg McElroy, Thinking Out Loud on SEC Network. Debuts on Labor Day. Marcus, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming on with us, man. We appreciate it.
All right, my guys, y'all hold it down, man. Don't burn that thing down before Bomani get back.
We'll try. No promises, but we'll try. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more.